What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. All right, so before I get into this video, shout out to the brother Eric for the donation to the channel via the Cash App. Much respect to him for showing love to Too Raw for TV. And he had, a very, very interesting hypothetical question that I've been pondering for the last couple of days, and that is, who would win? And I'm assuming he means in a series. Who would win between the 1995 Orlando Magic and the 2010 Boston Celtics? All right. Now, of course, the 2010 Boston Celtics were the second Boston Celtic team of that era to make it to the NBA Finals. But there were some subtle differences. By that point in time, Rajon Rondo had emerged as a more significant member of that team, of that squad. And Kevin Garnett was not quite the same player after the 2009 leg injury. As a matter of fact, one of the biggest X factors in that series, and not the biggest X factor in that series, other than the fact that in 2008, Andrew Bynum was not available, and Bynum had developed into a really good player, is that series, Pau Gasol outplayed Kevin Garnett. Kevin Garnett was no longer a superstar, but he was a really good player. But he had, after that injury, was no longer the same player. Nevertheless, that Boston Celtics team came literally within one quarter of winning an NBA championship. So they were a really, really, really good team. I cannot remember their overall record. I can't remember it. I want to say, I want to say they won something like 54 games or something. I can't recall. Someone can look it up and confirm that for me, because I know it did have some injury issues, but it came within a quarter of winning an NBA championship. And then, of course, you have the 1995 Orlando Magic, and this team was not as fortunate in the NBA Finals at all. That Finals was not competitive at all, although going into that Finals, many people thought the Magic had the advantage. This Orlando Magic team was very, very young. Shaq, of course, was coming into his own as a superstar in this league, and Penny Hardaway was making a name for himself as well. And you had other players on the team like Horace Grant, a veteran from the Chicago Bulls teams, coming on and joining that team that year. Then you had Nick Anderson and Dennis Scott. They were a great, great squad, man. Now, I definitely remember they went 57-25 during the regular season. And they were nearly unbeatable at home. Nearly unbeatable. I think they were like 39-2 at home that year. So who would win? Well, I'm going to tell you this. I think it would be a good series, but everything is screaming at me. Everything is screaming at me that Boston would win this series, more than likely. Now shit happens, upsets happen, but Boston would probably win this series for a couple of reasons. Number one, even though Shaq was only 23 years old at this time, this was a little bit of a smaller Shaq. I mean, I'm talking relatively. He was about 3'10", 315, which is still a big guy, man. But he wasn't the 340, 350, 360, sometimes even 370-pound Shaq of the Laker years. Now, on the flip side, I do think when he was smaller, he was a better rebounder and defensive player, which makes sense, right? Even with the numbers, he had better rebounding and shot blocking numbers when he was a smaller guy. He was more mobile, bouncier, so that's going to be a threat. Um, but offensively, he was still more raw. He hadn't quite perfected some of his standard moves quite yet in the post. And also, even Shaq has said that in the postseason, up until when he got to the Lakers, a couple years playing with them, he would give the same effort in the playoffs that he did during the regular season. And he finally learned under Phil Jackson that no, he had to play even better. He had to step his game up even more. Shaq would be content with putting up 27 and 12 or 26 and 13 in the series, not understanding that when you're playing against top tier competition, you got to go even harder. All the greats, they played even harder. So this version of Shaq may not always give his absolute 100%, as opposed to his prime self for the Lakers. That's not going to be a problem with the Boston Celtics. Even if they're not at their peak, they're going to give you 100% effort. That's just what that team was about. You know what I'm saying? That's why they almost came very, very close to dethroning the Lakers that year. So that's the advantage for, uh, I would say, Boston. Although you do have Penny Hardaway, who had a lot of heart, but I don't see him carrying that Magic team versus that Boston Celtic team and that defense too, which I haven't even talked about yet. Also, that Boston team was deeper, much, much deeper. Matter of fact, I think it could be argued that the Celtic team was deeper in 2010 than they were in 2008. And I think that's going to be one of the decisive factors in this series, this hypothetical series, in that Boston was just a much deeper team with a much more talented bench. And it would require, in my opinion, the Orlando Magic starting five to consistently outplay the Boston Celtics starting five by a wide margin to offset what the bench margin is going to be between those two teams. And I don't see that really happening. Don't get me wrong, Penny Hardaway's going to get his numbers. Shaq's going to get his numbers. The question is, will Nick Anderson and Dennis Scott consistently put up what they want to put up? You know, which I guess in this series will be 14 to 18 points, maybe. And I don't know if that's going to happen against the Boston Celtics. You know, we got Rajon Rondo and Ray Allen, and, you know, even though they were a little bit older, they still were capable of, especially Allen, of shooting the lights out too. And, you know, I don't remember Dennis Scott being noted for his defense. Now, Nick Anderson had a little bit more dog in him before those free throws, at least. But, you know, when you got Rajon Rondo, who is as multifaceted as he is, wasn't a great outside shooter, but a guy that was a facilitator, a great facilitator, a guy that wasn't a great jump shooter, but was strong at getting to the cup, had a knack for getting to the cup, had a knack for getting rebounds. You know, he kind of had like a little bit of a Russell Westbrook type flair to his game. I don't see anybody in Orlando stopping him. You know what I'm saying? Penny is going to get his Penny's going to win that matchup as far as putting up his numbers, but I don't see him stopping Rondo. I don't think he's going to stop him from doing what he want to do. Also, another thing that I'm thinking about is, and what I think is going to be key is when you got Shaq, right? Shaq's not going to want to come out that paint defensively. So I would think in this series. Now, remember in real life, of course, Kendrick Perkins got hurt in Game 7. But I would think, matchup wise, they would play um, Rasheed Wallace more in this series. Now, if I remember correctly, Rasheed Wallace had some foot issues then, which is why he retired after that year. Although he came back with the Knicks a couple years later, only to have the same foot issues. But anyway, I would think with a Rasheed Wallace, 6'10" at the time, 250 pounds, possibly could play. Uh, I would say a stretch four position, maybe even stretch five. Then you have Kevin Garnett, who could play stretch five. Outside shooting, with Wallace being able to shoot from 3-point range, yeah, they're going to have some issues. The Orlando Magic, they're going to have some issues defensively in these situations. Okay, even with Horace Grant, I don't recall Horace Grant being a great perimeter defender. He's a really good, very good post defender, but not perimeter defender. And I can see that being, some of the perimeter shooting of their big men for the Boston Celtics. That's going to be a problem. And then another thing I recall is that Boston was a pretty good road team, right? As opposed to the fact that Orlando, as unbelievable as they were at home that year, 39-2, were not necessarily a great road team. Uh, I believe they went something like 18-23 on the road, which was probably a precursor to why they performed so terribly in the finals. Not to mention the fact that sometimes youth work for them. The youth and inexperience sometimes help them in pressure situations to perform in a way that they normally would not have had they thought about it. But, inexperience hurt them in situations where they were playing uh, in games that they were not accustomed to play before, like in the NBA Finals. Uh, so look, I would go with the 2010 Boston Celtics. I don't know what the spread would be, but let's just, for the safety of, you know, just do this type of video, let's say 6 games. I do think that Orlando would probably have at least one blowout home win, but I think the other victory would be like sort of like a close win, right? And the 4 victories for Boston would be relatively close, but decisive in that Boston would dominate in the second halves or in the 4 quarters. That's how I look at it. And I don't know who will win Finals MVP, but if I had to really just take a stab at it, maybe Paul Pierce, who I didn't even mention in the video, by the way. But yeah, Boston just has way too many weapons uh, for Orlando. Now, like I said, I do think Penny Hardaway could come out and have a monster series. He could have actually the best numbers of all the players, honestly, but I don't think it'll be enough. But that's just how I look at it. Shaq will probably come out and probably lead both teams in scoring or just about, but it's not going to be enough. But anyway, tell me what you guys think.